Oh, if only there was something to talk about. There is so much news over the past 24 hours that I am going to attempt to combine a lot of it, what I found to be important, into this single video. So I'm going to go over the salute, Donald Trump raising prices for people on day one, also trans rights, this idea of Trump being for free speech, video games, you'll see how that plays into this, as well as Israel. So, going to be all over the place in this video, but let me start because there's a lot of it with this image shared by David Adler on Twitter saying, "These are not just the richest men in the world, they are the richest men in human history. And today they bend their knee at the throne of Donald J. Trump." I don't know if any of you people are still out there, any of you Trump voters who still thought that Trump was anti elite, anti establishment. But in case you exist, look at who is at his inauguration. The richest people in the world. That their interests are completely counter to the interests of working class people. So I don't know what else there is to say here. Clearly, there is this attempt by media around Trump to paint him as somehow anti-establishment, anti-elite, when he is the personification of the elite. As Luke Savage writes here, nothing profound to add here, but it's truly wild that there's a subset of radicalized reactionary media people who have embraced the idea that Trumpism is somehow a crusade against elites. Elites to these people apparently are trans people that have no power in society. Somehow they're elites, or teachers that think that they should be paid a little more and are in a union fighting for their rights. Somehow they're the elites. Like, who are these elites, if not for the very people sitting with him at his inauguration? Let's get to the salute, because this is just clear. Evan writes here in quotes, "It was an accident. He's autistic." These are some of the defenses that people are using to try and claim that this very obvious Nazi salute is not what we clearly see it as. But it's like he watched videos online and just practiced in the mirror. So, and he did that twice, by the way. He did it there, and then he turned around and did it for the crowd in the back, just to make sure, in case you missed it the first time. Evan writes, "Elon is not a Nazi. He just agreed with someone who said Hitler was right, boos Holocaust deniers and Nazis every single day, told everyone to watch a Holocaust denier on a podcast, repeats Nazi propaganda, has Nazi beliefs, does Nazi salutes." Mehdi Hassan added here, "Or agreed with an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory on Twitter, or unleashed and then amplified a bunch of anti-Semites on Twitter, or backed for president a guy who hosted a Holocaust denier for dinner, or called for Tommy Robinson's release, or pushed great replacement, etc., etc." We did not need to see the salute to know who Elon Musk is. It was always very clear who he was. The salute just puts a pin in it. Like, in case it wasn't already obvious, in case you were too stupid to realize who he already was, here it is in your face. It's very, very clear. To add to that, Rachel Gilmore tweets out here, "To everyone saying he didn't mean it like that, please tell the neo-Nazi Telegram channels I monitor who are freaking the F out because they saw it exactly like that." When the Nazis online are rejoicing because Elon Musk did a Nazi salute, then he did a Nazi salute. Last point here, I thought this was worth sharing. It wasn't a Sieg Heil. Hey man, I'm going to be honest. I get that it's possible that you're that stupid, but I'm not. There you go. All right, let's get to Donald Trump. You know what? Sure. Maybe some Nazis here and there, but I know Donald Trump cares about the people. What he cares most about is ensuring people can afford to live. That's why he passed this, or signed into law, this executive order on Medicare, which actually rescinds Joe Biden's executive order, which was put in place to lower the cost of prescription drugs. So, day one of Trump's administration, he is raising the cost of prescription drugs. In case you want the details on this, this is the impact of rescinding the executive order. One, halt development of cost reduction models. So, by the way, I'm not going to read through all this, but you can read through it yourself. Pause the video. Two, potential increase in out of pocket expenses and uncertainty in future drug pricing policies. This was so important to Trump to give the pharmaceutical industry, to give pharmaceutical corporations a win. This was so important to him that he had to do this on day one. And he may not stop there. Common Dreams writes here, Larry Levitt, Executive Vice President for Health Policy at Kaiser Family Foundation, added that, quote, the big question, which Trump hasn't addressed yet, is what he'll do with government negotiation of drug prices under the Inflation Reduction Act. Just days before Trump took office, the Biden administration announced a fresh slate of 15 medications set to be subject to direct price negotiations between the federal government and pharmaceutical companies, many of which have sued over the negotiation program, thus far unsuccessfully. Pharmaceutical companies not happy that they actually have to lower their prices like they're forced to in other countries. So they are trying to change that. Now that they have Trump, they have been lobbying him. Reuters reporting here on the 16th, Pharma digs in on changes it wants from Trump administration, which the changes are obvious. Pharmaceutical industry is focusing its request for President-elect Donald Trump and Congress on fixing a Biden-era law allowing the Medicare health plan to negotiate prices for its costliest medicines along with insurance changes. Considering he already gave them a win on day one, don't be surprised if he tries to reverse this as well. Though it may require Congress to do so, but considering he has it, it's probably not going to be too far off. So, let's address free speech. Kyle Klinsky, who I think does a fantastic job at communicating the insanity of Trump, breaks down here. Trump says he'll bring free speech back to America. He recently sued Ann Seltzer for a poll he didn't like, sued CBS for how it edited a Kamala interview, sued Simon & Schuster for a Bob Woodward book because it quoted him, threatened to delicense news outlets that criticize him, wants to punish flag burning with a year in jail, sued CNN for $475 million for calling election denialism the big lie, sued Bill Maher for $5 million over a joke, supports opening up the libel laws to sue journalists, call for jailing journalists who reported on the SCOTUS abortion ruling, wants to deport pro-Palestine protesters, gag ordered the EPA from telling the truth on climate change, arrested and charged six journalists with felony rioting, didn't pardon Assange, Snowden, or Daniel Hale, wanted to invoke the Insurrection Act to deploy U.S. troops against George Floyd protesters, called to terminate all rules, regulations, and articles in the Constitution over his election loss. He is the most anti-free speech president in modern American history. Complete authoritarian con man fraud. In case you have any friends out there that think Donald Trump he's for free speech, I'm going to link this below the video along with all of my sources in the description box under sources on YouTube. Save this link and share it around with the people that think Trump cares about free speech. No, he cares about himself. Now, trans rights. So Zaxios writes here, Trump targets transgender protections in a new executive order. So I'm going to get to some commentary on this from somebody who follows this a little more closely, just so it's clear that some of this doesn't appear to be enforceable immediately, but as Axios writes here, Trump's executive order states that only two sexes will be recognized by the federal government, male and female. As such, those two sexes will be recognized for official documents such as passports and visas. Sex is not a synonym for and does not include the concept of gender identity, the order states. The executive order aims to prohibit taxpayer funds from being used for gender affirming care and to prevent transgender women from being held in women's prisons or detention centers. Now, Alejandro Caraballo, who covers these issues closely, writes here, there is nothing enforceable for the immediate future. It will take months or years to implement this via rulemaking or bureaucratic changes, which are then subject to legal challenge. While it's worrying, there's no immediate change yet for most trans people. Do not comply in advance. And goes on to add here, if you're a trans federal employee or seeking to change your gender marker on federal IDs, this may affect you sooner rather than later. It's likely changes could be implemented by the end of the week. For everyone else, this will take significant time. Federal bureaucracy moves slowly. Now, I didn't know where to fit this in, so I'm squeezing this between two more important issues, trans rights, and we'll get to Israel and Gaza in a second here. But Matt Piscatella, I think this is worth mentioning because there is a subset, it's small, but there's a subset of gamers, especially online, on Twitter, that are very pro Trump, very conservative, or I should say very right wing, and are very happy with Trump being the president. Well, I wonder if they're going to be happy about this. As Matt Piscatella writes, with 25% tariffs on imports from Mexico on the way, I can see a sharp downtick in the number of disc based games that get released physically in the US, as much of that production infrastructure is in Mexico. If they do get made, I expect higher prices, both physical and digital. I would, were this to happen, anticipate digital MSRPs to increase to remain at price parity with physical, but who knows? In any case, none of this is good for the physical video game market. Can't that production just be moved to the US? With significant investment, sure, but annual US physical video game software spending is now half what it was in 2021 and declining rapidly. And this also wouldn't help when it comes to costs. Not a good combo to incentivize that investment, in my opinion. So, if you think it's important to have physical media, physical games, because we all know digitally, we don't actually own anything digitally. Those companies control all that infrastructure, all those servers. Then I imagine this will annoy people, especially those that are vocal Trump supporters who are gamers. But you never know with those weirdos. So let's get to, again, it's a very weird transition here, but here we go. The Jerusalem Post sharing this. IDF launches Operation Iron Wall against Palestinian terror in Jenin as PA exits. So this gets to what I've been talking about, what I was talking about leading up to the election. I'll get to the headline in a second. But essentially, this temporary ceasefire, as is understood by Netanyahu and as Trump confirmed yesterday, this is a temporary ceasefire. It's not a full-on ceasefire. Heidi Matthews sharing here, Israel has launched Operation Iron Wall in the West Bank's Jenin on day 2 of Trump's presidency. It is named for a 1923 essay, The Iron Wall. Here's an extract. Zionist colonization can proceed and develop only behind an iron wall. So there's clearly an intention here to take over the West Bank. UN human rights account here writing, they are alarmed by a wave of renewed violence perpetrated by settlers and Israeli security forces in the occupied West Bank, coinciding with the implementation of the Gaza ceasefire agreement and the release of hostages and detainees. This has been accompanied by increased restrictions on Palestinians' freedom of movement across the West Bank, including complete closure of some checkpoints and installation of new gates, effectively confining entire communities. This report from back in June is one that I had consistently highlighted leading up to the election. Pro-Israel billionaire Miriam Adelson backs Trump campaign, pushes for West Bank annexation. Trump is simply a vessel for the interests of billionaires, be it tech bros, be it people like Miriam Adelson, where their issue is Israel dominating Palestinians. So this news that this is now happening is not surprising if you've been following Trump and what he actually cares about, which is nothing but money and serving those that give him money. I want to end on a high note, but here we are. This is day one. I'm going to be honest. It's impossible for me to cover every single thing that is going to come out of this administration. I am one person. My focus, as well as a Canadian, is going to be largely on Canada leading up to the next election and how this potentially impacts how Trump administration is going to impact Canada as well. So I'm going to be, a little all over the place in terms of what I cover and what I think I can add in terms of commentary. But I just thought it was important on day one to sort of lay out the big issues immediately that have come out of this new administration and likely the focus of what is going to be an insane 4 years at least.